so often it's like, well, then I, it goes back to just showing up and stepping out. So start where you are.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of change makers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Agency for Change podcast. This is Lynn Weinman, President and Chief Strategist at KidGlov. I have known today's guest for quite a long time, so this is going to be a real treat. Susan Willig is a true pioneer in advancing women's health and leadership. She has dedicated her career to helping women rise, ensuring they have a stronger voice in healthcare as executives, as founders, and as innovators. Her passion lies in creating opportunities where women can lead change and bring forward solutions that directly impact lives. She is also the CEO and Chief Brand Strategist of TrueNorth, a firm she launched after a career with global leaders like Edwards Lifesciences, Thomson Reuters, and LexisNexis. At TrueNorth, Susan helps growth-minded organizations discover where to focus their time, their money, and their energy for the greatest impact. It is a powerful combination of purpose and strategy that makes her work truly transformative. Susan, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Lynn. I'm very glad to be here after knowing you for all these years.
It
What a gift.
has it has been a long time, and you and
Yes.
I, we live across the country from each other. So
Mhm.
every time I get the opportunity to see you, whether it's virtually or in person, I am very excited about that, Susan. And I
Wonderful.
am really excited to hear about some new projects that you are working on because I know that you are a real advocate for women's health, but for yourself, for leaders, for
Mhm.
innovators. And I really want to hear more about your work in this space.
Well, I'm going to start where I am now, and that is I have a brand strategy advisory, and I seek to work with women founders or women led companies and women focused innovations. I also enjoy working with any firm that leaves a positive footprint in
Mm,
healthcare, but that's where I am now. It's been a journey to get here, and I feel like this moment is really the convergence of all my experiences to date, not to be too dramatic.
yeah, no, I love that. And I feel like I've heard that a lot on this podcast too, Susan. And you're perfect for Agency for Change because we love to talk to people who are making a positive impact. But often when I hear people's stories, it's not that straight line. Like I knew that I wanted to be here and I just went straight there, right? It's
Mhm.
often I started here and then I took this turn and then I had this experience. And then sometimes even it's like, hey, I had an unexpected thing happen that didn't seem good at the time, but now all of those pieces go together to make me perfect. And I know that's part of your story too.
So much, so much. And, the corny silver lining, but looking back, of course, hindsight, but so many bad moments in my life, I would say, I see led me to this moment
Mm,
and many of the gifts that I have in my life. And
yeah.
I am grateful for that. You can't take those away. It would change everything.
Yeah. Before you dive in, I think that's such an important point because so many of us are so success oriented. We're drivers, we're
Mhm.
perfectionists, right? I know that to be true about you. I know it to be true about me. And sometimes we'll have something happen that doesn't go exactly as we plan. And we think, oh no, that's a horrible setback. If I could go back to my younger self, I would tell her, there are no setbacks. These are experiences that I know it didn't go exactly the way you thought it would or you wanted, but you can build on this. You are going to learn something from this
Mhm.
that will take you forward.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Hmm.
yeah.
And just to keep stepping out, right?
Yeah.
We just have to keep getting up and stepping out. The way that I assuage any fear is to think that to know that I'm resilient, to look at
Yeah.
my history and know that I can rise
Ab
again.
Absolutely. All right. Susan, I love that spin that we were able to take, but I am really curious because I know you are doing some exciting work in the women's health space, and I really want to hear more about it.
Yes. Okay. So I recently started with six other women, something called the SoCal Women's Health Collective.
Yeah.
And it is most simply bringing women and men, we're open. We had men at our last two together in the women's health and healthcare space. Founders, funders, academics, industry, advocates, lobbyists,
Yeah.
and the how that came together is I recently joined an advocacy group called Women's Health Advocates. It is bipartisan, focused on whole women's health, and I'm on the steering committee.
Wow.
And through them, I was sharing that I wanted to bring so many amazing women in my life together and men, but like
Yeah.
women joining forces. I like meeting you. I say, Lynn, I want you to meet so and so.
Yeah.
And so I shared with them that I was actually working with UCI when public health to have a joint gathering. We couldn't swing it this year, but we hope to do it next year. And this women's health advocates group said, well, there are other women in our group in Southern California that want to do that. There's so much activity.
Yeah.
And so we're sharing resources like investors or studies or, the business of women's health
Yeah.
makes sense. And there's a group called Women's Health Access Matters, WHAM, Carol Lee, and she is proving the business case for women's health. And while we're
Wow.
at it, I'm just going to plug because women founders, while they make up 12 to 13% of founding companies, they get only 2 to 3% of funding, but they exit faster, they're more capital efficient, and their multipliers are higher. So you're like, it's
Wow.
illogical. It's illogical. Like, let's not even, worry about gender wars. It's just illogical that
Yeah.
more women are not funded.
That's fascinating, Susan. I have heard that stat before as well. As a matter of fact, I think it's from another one of our Agency for Change podcast guests, Estelle Gerard, who's the founder of a startup called Trellis Health that
Oh, I
is
know prelates. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
Estelle was on, and I know they've made great strides since we talked to her, but she shared a similar, if not the exact same stat, right? And the importance of really, I think, empowering, embracing, supporting women who are in this space.
Well, and I'm on the board of not of Women Investing in Security and in Education. It's a nonprofit board. But what I'm learning is how important understanding the flow of capital is.
Yeah,
And there's a woman named Sylvia Kim who founded Rebel for Good, and it's helping teach young women coming from wealthy families how to use their money for good. And
yeah,
I've been in business, so it's not that I don't understand a P&L and budgets, but I didn't truly understand how important understanding capital flow is,
right.
which is why I seek to help women succeed through my agency and to help create innovation, because by having more seats at the table, having more capital, we can
Yeah.
influence more things.
Right. I think the world of capital is very different from the world of just understanding the finances of
Yes,
your business, right? And
100%.
and understanding how to pitch yourself, understanding, what even within the whole universe of investors, which investors you should approach and go
Mhm.
after, who's going to be most likely to connect with the impact you are creating in the world. So, Susan, the stat that you shared, I think starts to tell the story, but I'm really curious, why is this work so important right now?
Well, I would actually say it is overdue. It's so
Ooh,
much more than right now.
yeah.
I entered healthcare about 20 years ago from
Uh-huh.
tech, as you know, where we
Yeah, we
met.
worked together in the tech space. That's how you and I met. So, but I love
Exactly.
that the healthcare space feels so much more purposeful, I would have to say,
Oh,
than the tech space. Do you agree with that?
I can't go back. Someone asked me why healthcare, and I really paused, and then I thought, I can't do anything else.
Right.
Honestly, I can't.
Right.
There's no choice now. And I purposefully entered healthcare. It took me 2 years actually to get into Edwards Life Sciences. I
Yeah.
understood the company, and because I didn't come from healthcare, but leaving a positive imprint. But 20 years, so through Healthcare Business Women's Association, I learned that women were underrepresented in studies, and that was probably 15 years ago.
Wow.
And I was like,
Yeah.
how could this be? This doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make sense. But our physiology is complex, so we're harder to study and more expensive. And when you have a deadline for a study and you have a business, sometimes you make choices as a
Yeah.
business. And I was shocked. And then once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. I mean,
Yeah.
even just in January, there was a study published about CMS reimbursement looking at 55 procedures, and they're reimbursed approximately 35% less than the equivalent male procedure. It just defies logic to me. So certainly the current administration forged my resolve like so many other women, but it was already my passion and part of when I broke out what I was seeking to do. And and so even the companies that I work with, they may not all be women founders, but certainly what they're doing will help positively impact healthcare, including women.
Yeah.
And I do want to take 30 seconds to say, when we talk about women's health, a lot of people think they joke boobs and tubes, but
Yeah.
it is disorders or conditions and diseases that disproportionately, differently, or solely impact women. And
Yeah.
so autoimmune diseases more greatly impact women at the rate of 80% are women. So these are just things to be aware of. But even still, many today, still women are understudied. And now at least the FDA is requiring in some cases to put on the label that this product has not been studied in women. So we're taking medications that have not been studied in women.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to say something here, Susan, that you may disagree with, and I'm okay if you disagree with it. But, I think what you just said, it's so easy to think about women's health and joke boobs and tubes, right? And I
Right.
think so many women we tend to be a bit self-effacing. We tend to put
Yeah.
others first. So we like live with the joke, right? And then I think that translates to often, and I know you're more focused on founders and investors, but women as patients, I think, tend to be not listened to. I just was speaking to a dear friend whose daughter was having in high school, a high school athlete, very physically fit, very smart young woman. She was having stomach pains
Mhm.
and they kept going in and they kept saying, well, it's just stress. It's just stress. And it turned out that finally, after quite a long time, they found out that it was a serious medical condition that required surgery, but it was just kind of brushed off, right? And I think getting to the point where women feel they deserve to be listened to and they are listened to, I think is an important point to get to.
Oh, 110% there is bias in the system and even women to women. So
Yeah.
Dr. Bio, if you look her up on LinkedIn, she had a postpartum hemorrhage and she's a physician. She was giving birth and said, something's not right. Something's not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone was like, no, no, you're fine. It's fine, fine. Finally, she called her doctor because she's a physician. She could, call.
Yeah.
And the doctor's
Yeah.
like, something's not right. She was having a hemorrhage. So to your point, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
100%. Part of health equity initiatives is bringing awareness to bias, and even people of color to people of color, or everybody's acknowledging we have biases,
Right.
which is why I think it's so critical that we have diversity, because we will
Mm,
see things that others that don't look
yeah.
like us don't. You know what I mean? And that's why I
Right.
think diversity at the top and throughout is
Yeah.
critical. Gender, racial, ethnic, is
Yeah.
because we are going to see things, and it's proven that it increases innovation. It's better for business. This is
Yeah.
also what I don't understand. But we have to start to build, if I'm just going to bring it full circle, the networks that are going to do this. We have to,
Yes.
and that's where SoCal Women's Health Collective is. Like, I can refer out, oh, we need, we still have manels, all male panels, and I am surprised in this day and age it's even possible. But I think it's simply because, not solely, but it is because the networks that are creating maybe don't have the reach. So if
Yeah.
part of my goal is like, let's just infuse some more people into the mix so that you choose the best candidate from the total pool.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I love that, Susan. Susan, you've touched a little bit on your journey into this space, but I'd love to go a little bit deeper on what inspired your focus, because you've really gone deep into this healthcare and women's leadership in healthcare focus. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I'm going to expand slightly to that. Is in 2001, when I was with a startup, I saw them, so many startups squander their resources
Mm.
for good solutions by not having what I call their TrueNorth brand and marketing strategy,
Oh,
right? That
yeah.
strong foundation. And I'm not,
Yeah.
but so then fast forward, I choose to go into healthcare, get closer to strategy, get some great experience. And I thought it is, but we're still seeing a lack of innovation, especially in smaller markets. Now, for clarity, women's health is not a smaller market. In fact,
Right.
it's a bigger market. But
Yeah.
it is, so when I decided to break out and leave corporate America to start my firm, I wanted to work with smaller, early stage, or restart any, Lynn,
Yeah.
any seismic shift in the business
Right. Because
requires a
that's when
fresh
you
look.
can make the impact,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and you need a purpose. It's just about creating a purposeful moment.
Hmm.
So, I'm going to bring it full circle to answer your question, but this purposeful moment where you look at the business and the brand and marketing strategy, and then whether you have $1, 1 million, 10 million, you're spending it in the right place. So, for me, though, with women led companies, and it shouldn't just be women founded, but women led, or innovations that positively impact women's health, is if I can work with them and help them succeed and grow and deliver their solution to market by setting a TrueNorth brand and marketing strategy foundation,
Yeah.
then I succeed. And I know what I'm good at, and I know what, for example, I want to let experts like KidGlov do, right?
Yeah.
We can be allies and partners, and you can focus there. I'm never going to be as well versed on all the channels and tactics, especially with digital. Even
Yeah.
though I started in digital, like it's going at warp speed. So I'm looking at partners like you with
Right.
great and philosophically aligned brand strategy minds, right? You aren't going to
Yeah.
do anything that isn't purposeful, right? And on strategy. I know this about you from
Yeah.
having worked with you.
Yeah, we love working with you, Susan. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, when you get into marketing strategy and brand strategy, having specific knowledge about an industry and a target audience, and you
Mhm.
just the way you talk about and understand the industry is so important. And having that niche, I even think, sometimes we talk about branding. Branding doesn't make you attractive to everyone in the universe.
No.
Branding makes you attractive to the right people. So in a
Amen.
way, right? It's a
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
of elimination so that you're
Right.
not out there being everything to everybody because that is not where you want to be.
100%. I mean, there are companies that I have approached that don't want to invest in what I'm offering and they want to
Right.
go right to a tactic. And that's
Right.
not a good fit for me. There are others that'll be a great fit, but that I should not be, I won't. I mean, I wouldn't engage with that company because I
Yeah.
think it's a lose lose for everyone. And even my personal brand strategy is true self to true self. So
Mm.
showing up as my authentic and consistent
Yes.
self and seeking to attract. And I as any human, I was about to say as a woman, but I think this is just humanity.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get uncomfortable and imposter syndrome. And that's where knowing my purpose and my authentic self helps me show up with more courage and
Yeah.
sometimes confidence. But that's where I believe a good brand strategy will let the company's true self or the
Yes.
founder's true self, and that will attract because it's not
Yes.
a bait and switch. That's when you can create delighters for your audience. And then
Yeah.
there's one quote about brand that is when someone binds themselves to you. Could you, as a company, though, I was like, that is awesome when
Yeah.
you are ready to bind yourself to a company because you just know that it's an authentic, alliance, I guess.
That's
That's
what you
brand strategy
want.
at its best.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that, Susan. I love that so much. And I want to dig in more into True North in a minute because I love the work that you're doing. In the realm of women's health, though, I'm really curious because you are deep
Oh,
in this space with so much knowledge. Where do you see
mhm.
right now the biggest gaps and or opportunities?
Whew. Well, certainly we need to innovate for women
Yeah.
and to address women's health. Like I said, there are some big gaps. I'm going to have a bias. I'm just going to speak it out.
Yeah.
I have a real bias on the gap but it's starting to be addressed in menopause and
Yes.
or actually hormonal changes. Certainly, it's pronounced in menopause, but we have not adequately communicated nor addressed the gaps in hormonal changes. And I
Yeah.
just feel for the women that have gone before us, Lynn, who didn't have, and I know there's complexity around hormone replacement, but we now know estrogen is essential to our mind, our
Yes.
joints,
Yes.
our cardiovascular disease. Menopause and cardiovascular disease, or even pregnancy, hormone changes, it's
Yes.
real. And so understanding that and solving for it. So I think the biggest gap is both in research and innovation
Yeah.
around women's health. And that's where, yeah.
Susan, as an entrepreneur and business owner myself too, I employ a lot of women, actually predominantly women at KidGlov. We have women on both ends of that spectrum, women who are, having their first or second child, women who are on the beginning of the menopause stage. And as an employer, even understanding and being
Mhm.
supportive during these times of life too, because we've all seen the data on how expensive it is to replace an employee, how
Yeah.
expensive it is to have an employee or a team member who doesn't feel supported and what that does to productivity and engagement. And so, even really understanding that part of life and
Yes.
supporting your workforce, I think is important, right?
Yes. And I think, not I think, I know that having started menopause and not had a deep understanding, and thank goodness for my girl tribe who brought studies to my
Yes.
attention and I started reading, but I had just started my business and I was in the thick of brain fog
Oh,
and I was afraid. I was like, what's happening to
what's
me?
happening? And the beginning, those beginning years of being a
Yes.
business founder, you are like in it. You are in it
Yes,
up to your eyeballs, right? Yeah.
it's mental warfare too. Like you got to
Yes.
get up and get after it. And I was also conscious of, oh, if I show up and have a hot flash, is someone not going to hire me because they're going
Right.
to be old? And
Yeah.
so, and I did go on hormone therapy, so I wouldn't. I mean, I don't like hot flashes, so don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I was like, I love thinking. I love intellectual dialogue like this. It
Yes.
invigorates me. I think that's why I'm drawn to brand strategy and having
Hmm.
workshops and collaborating with CEOs and I mean the whole team actually just across the board and
Yeah.
hearing diverse perspective and remaining curious. But so having my mind in jeopardy scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. A hundred
Yep.
percent. A hundred
Yeah.
percent. Susan, I know that our listeners on this podcast are very engaged and involved in important issues. How can listeners who are really interested in this topic get involved and support the work with some of these organizations or initiatives that you're involved in?
Well, so first I think is in expanding your awareness of the topic, like CMS
Hmm.
reimbursement, even what you were talking about menopause in the workplace or hormonal,
Yeah.
is one of women's health advocates. We had our first ever Women's Health Day, so head to toe women's health
Yeah.
on the Hill. And one of the topics was women going through menopause in the military and
Oh,
providing some
wow. I never
infrastructure.
even thought
Me
about
neither,
that.
Lynn. I didn't. And
Oh,
so this
geez.
is what I mean, just expanding your horizons. And then it gets to once you see it, you can't unsee it. Then,
Right.
in terms of taking action, writing your leaders, your Congress people, and
Yeah.
writing to them on topics around which you're passionate. And that makes a difference. I mean, I know we've been able to impact some of the proposed changes. Then I think it is just showing up. It, we had a really good turnout at the last couple Women's Health Collective, and I was touched by women gathering, but women came up to me, laughed. Well, everyone, actually, there were two
Yeah.
brave men that showed up, and everyone was like, "Thank you. I met so and so. I met so and so. I needed this. This will advance X." And it was all, roles, not just people looking for money or people looking for a job. It was just expanding perspective. So I think gathering like-minded or diverse, actually, because we're
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
there's a bit of friction, I think.
Hmm.
And so that's another thing. Women's health advocates, women health access matters. I also think I started volunteering also for Meals on Wheels OC. I'm on that board, but
Mm.
I started volunteering and that just expanded. So looking for opportunities to expand our circles. And
Yeah.
in this case, I would even call to action for men to learn about
Hmm.
different women's. The funny thing is it. I was in a workshop once and a man started talking about his wife and her hot flashes at night. And I said, "Oh, my soapbox, is she on hormones?" And he's like, "I don't know. I don't get into that." I was like, "Hey, this is a win-win for you.
Right.
I'll share a resource. You can share with her and then step out. But this is win-win. We're all in it together." I talked to my brothers about all their stuff. I have fortunate to have four older brothers whom I love and a younger sister. And what
Yeah.
a great tribe that is. But we share stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think about my husband who came from a family that only had sons, right? And now we have two daughters and one son, and he's had to learn a lot about women's issues over
Yes.
time. And we are not a quiet group. So bless his heart for being supportive and doing the things actually that you just said, like educate yourself, take action, show up, volunteer, try
Yes.
some diverse things. And I got to give a shout out to Meals on Wheels, one of my favorite
Uh,
causes, right?
yes.
Delivering nutritious meals, generally to seniors, but sometimes
Right.
other folks.
Homebound.
But I think what people don't realize is the most important aspect, I believe, of Meals on Wheels is not even about the food. It's about the laying eyes on and having a human
Human
connection during the day. There's
100%.
across the country so many great stories of, people's lives being saved, changed because Meals on Wheels showed up and you didn't come to the door. And so we figured out what was wrong, or we observed something that seems kind of strange and got someone involved. So I think that that's a really, really important one.
We
So
always say it's more than a meal. So I'll just
more than
plug
a
that. And
meal. Yeah.
it's human contact. And they also have a friendly visitor program. So you can go. I played
Mm.
chess with a gentleman and he
Mm.
cheats. I don't know whether it's because he has Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
or dementia, or he knows he's doing it and is just pretending. But either way, we get a good chuckle out of it.
I
So,
love it. I love
yeah.
that so much. So Susan, let's go back a little bit. You mentioned at the top of the show that you started getting involved through client work. Was that kind of your path into some of this women's health issues or board that you served on? What did that look like?
Oh, actually, no. I started getting involved on the advocacy
Okay. All right.
side and population health. And then as I started to see more and more and participate in pitches and incubators and like
Mm-hmm.
Octane, RevHub OC, Medical Mondays, different groups, SBDC, I started to notice not a lot of women were there and or meeting. Actually, I'm going to back up. South by Southwest,
Oh,
which was
yeah.
a number of years ago when I was still at Edwards, a woman named Brittany Barreto had a networking group for women's health. And that's where I met all these amazing
Ah,
women founders. And I'm like, whoa, this exists. And then
yeah.
I then I and again through that healthcare business women's association saw about studies. So it was, but most of my engagement started on the advocacy side,
Okay.
networking, and then that was even before I spun out. And then when I spun out, or I say spun out, when I left Inspired, I spun out.
Yeah.
I I was really impassioned. I guess also I would say just women in leadership in general and personal brand strategy. And I'm trying not to go down a rabbit hole, but I've always had a passion for women in leadership, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
industry,
Yeah.
because I had a career my whole life, really
Yeah.
started at 18. And I know that I felt uncomfortable at times showing
Mm.
up, and
Yeah.
I was often the only woman in the room.
Yes.
And I watched men succeed, and then I started observing, like, oh, wait, they're asking for things. I need to start
Yes.
asking for
Yes.
things. And so I don't begrudge them that. I learned even my opportunity to live and work in Switzerland for a year.
Yeah.
One of my male colleagues had that opportunity. And I went to him and I said, how'd you get to do that? And he said, I asked for it. So I asked for it for about 5 years before the opportunity arose. But this is where just sharing my story and my journey, if I can encourage other women to show up
Yes.
and ask for what they want and show
Yes.
up as their authentic self. And I did just work with a venture funder,
Yeah.
and she has a fund that focuses on women-led businesses in health and manufacturing. And so I worked with her to develop her, I would say not develop, but illuminate her personal brand strategy. And
Yeah.
that was so fulfilling. And she's based out of Detroit with the Bell Fund, and her name is Katie Kurtz, and
Mm.
she has something called Hello Katie. So I
Ooh.
just think it was so inspiring. Like that was the fulfillment of all my passion. I met her through Women's Health Advocates. So I guess all this is just about
Yeah.
networking, women coming together around women's health, but it was in leadership. That
Yeah.
was a little bit of a rabbit hole, I'll admit, but that is, I guess, what inspires me and
Yeah.
how it all, that convergence again.
Susan, it's a good rabbit hole because when I asked you for advice, one of your points was show up. You said educate yourself, take action, show up. You have just given us so many examples of where showing up helped you make that next connection, that helped you make the
Mhm.
next connection. And you never really know, right? You never really know when something's going to come from a connection. But by being
Right?
a good
Yes.
person, an interested person who gets to know people and connects the dots, good things will always, always, always come out of that. So I'd love to connect the
Thank you.
dots on True North a little bit and
Thank
have you
you, Lynn.
tell us, because when after you and I we worked together really closely about 20 years ago, and then we kind of went through a time where we didn't really connect. Like I could see you on social media that you were doing things and succeeding. But, when we reconnected and you told me about your brand, True North, I said, wow, that feels right for Susan. But just tell us more about your brand and what you're doing.
So True North is a brand strategy advisory firm. It's my firm. I love it. I'm very passionate about brand strategy, as you can tell. Where I was surprised in healthcare is how long it takes to change behavior in
Mm,
spite all the clinical evidence. And that encouraged me to deepen my knowledge and expertise in behavioral science, behavioral drivers, cognitive biases. And so that's where I focus is you'll understand this, Lynn, but
yeah.
building that strong foundation, even encouraging companies and supporting them to articulate their vision, mission, purpose, their category, their value proposition, getting down, because that will help illuminate the channels and
Hmm.
tactics that they are going to choose, where they
Hmm.
put their time, money, and resources for greatest impact. And I wanted to do that again for the smaller, early stage startup or even restart companies. So, a new company that I'm working with, they're at a very pivotal moment. And so I get to help them reestablish, maybe take a fresh look at their true north so that they can
Mm.
grow and thrive and have greater impact than they're already having. They're in revenue.
Yeah,
What
one of my favorite quotes that relates to that, Susan, I think it was a Henry Ford quote, but it was whether you do know where you're going or whether you don't know where you're going, you'll get there, right? And if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to waste so much time and energy and opportunity. And I think I heard you say that earlier about startups squandering their startup funds by
Yes.
not having their true north. And I love that so much about what you do and what your brand is for yourself.
Well, the biggest objections I get is I don't have budget for this right now. It's too early, but it can be as simple as a brand strategy workshop. I was thinking about it this morning is just a dedicating the executive leadership time for the brand
Yes.
strategy, bringing ideally some needs-based primary research on some level, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
the table, understanding your market. You know, Gateway was kind of guilty of this is like, if I can put a button there, I'm going to put a button there, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it, it wasn't always needs based. And this is where so many seemingly good innovations haven't understood the clinical workflow and the clinical pathway, and changing behavior is really stinking hard because
It is.
you could be introducing, I'll just give the benefit of doubt, you could be introducing risk into the equation, and we know people don't
People don't
like
like
change.
risk.
Yeah,
No.
and they don't like change.
Right. They really don't like change, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that new habit forming, I think that's also where I shine and thrive, is helping. I'm really good at building new initiatives, pioneering new things. I'm better at forging pathways than paving or than directing traffic. Operational things would not be my strength, but helping forge a new pathway or pioneer an initiative. And it can even be for an established company. I was very fortunate at Edwards, and I'm always grateful that I was able to build many initiatives there.
Yeah.
And so that gave me great experience in healthcare that I can take and share with these smaller companies that couldn't have, I'm going to say tested versus experimented. But I
Yeah.
read recently a paper that showed that, in science, hypothesis test is part of life. It's
Right.
not a failure, and it takes at least 6 hypothesis tests before you get to the optimal. And not
Wow.
that we want to allow for 6 failures in business, quote unquote failures, but allowing room for hypothesis and test is extremely
Is
valuable.
space. I do think that's interesting because I think there are a lot of people who just expect, I have this idea, I'm going to do it, I
Mhm.
expect it to work. But we all know in life, it often is not going to work exactly the way you think it is. So,
Yes.
Susan, one thing I really appreciate about you when you and I have collaborated together, and even back when you and I worked together with Gateway Computers, you worked at Gateway. I was with one of Gateway's many agencies and we got to work together.
Yeah.
But you always ask the good questions and the hard questions, right? And I think,
Thank you.
making sure you ask those questions and understand the situation. And you're doing something right when you ask a question that just stops people in their tracks and they go, "Oh, I haven't thought about that." And it's like, well, let's think about that. Let's play that out a bit more because we might be, uncovering a whole new opportunity or maybe preventing a huge disaster from
Yes.
happening, right? And you think about, and I don't want to call any of them out, but you think about some of the big brand fails that have happened in the last couple of years, and you wonder, was there anybody on the team who asked the hard questions, right? Like, where was everybody when this was going down? Somebody in the room. And I think I always just like to encourage, and I think for my team too, it's like, I would so much rather have you ask the question than assume,
Mhm.
oh, if I ask that question, I'll rock the boat, or they've probably already thought about this. It's like, if you've got the question, ask it because you may be the one, that's
Mhm.
really revealing a new area of information. Well, Susan, what's
May
on
I
the
comment on that?
horizon? Yeah. Oh, yes, please
I
do.
went 2 comments is I learned, I think, too later than I would have liked to in my career,
Yeah.
is to go into initiatives with a in it together attitude.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
thought show up, I had to be bulletproof, oh,
Yes.
I'm so nervous. And it didn't make me as collaborative as it could have been
Yeah.
beneficial. But once I learned, like, you know what, I'm going to show up at my best,
Yeah.
100%. And if I miss something, thank you for pointing that out.
Right.
Anyone, a boss, a colleague, a direct report, thank you for pointing it out and being appreciative and trying to keep my mind open to that. And then the second thing in alliance with that or in alignment with that is also if a team member invites me to a meeting, ask, what is my role? Are you just wanting my opinion? Are you seeking my approval? Understanding that so that I'm not disruptive to the process. And I've had direct reports call me out on that in a good way. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful they did because, again, once you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing
Uh-huh.
this. And
Yeah.
that's where, even in the area of women's health, if someone's listening to this being like, oh, this is ridiculous, it's fine. I just ask that they just open their eyes and
Yeah.
look for. And then once you start seeing red cars, you can't stop seeing red
Right.
cars. You know that
Right.
phrase?
Yeah.
So that's the in it together. I wish I would have learned that and been less intimidated or embarrassed when I miss things and have learned to be more grateful when
Yeah.
at my
Such
best, Lynn, at my best,
Such
right?
good advice. I'm with you there because I know you would never advocate for, you know, not being anything less than your best. But yet sometimes you can't know all the things. You can't always be right. And so if you can open your mind to, I have done my best, I have what I have, this is what I think, but my mind is open to other people sharing differing viewpoints,
Yes.
pointing things out, that A, it makes your work stronger. B, it makes your life better too, because you aren't always in this constant state of anxiety, right? Which I think
Yes.
is just so good for your mental health, your physical health. So,
Oh my gosh. Yes.
yeah. Susan, for people who are listening, who really dig what you're saying, maybe they're a founder in the healthcare space or they need a brand strategy, how can they connect with you and find out more information about True North?
Thank you. Well, my URL is truenorthsw.com.
Okay.
You can also email me at susan@idtruenorth.com.
Great. We will have both of those in the
Thank
show notes
you.
on the KidGlov website for people who
Lovely.
want to connect. All right, Susan, I'm going to ask you my favorite question next. We've asked it on every episode. The listeners know that I am inspired by motivational quotes. I like to collect quotes like other people collect seashells and books and figurines, right? So, can you give me a Susan Willig original quote?
Oh, well, it starts where you are,
Mm.
and meaning I did read it somewhere, but I've adopted it. Is
Yeah,
start where you are. So often it's like, well, then I,
yeah.
and it goes back to just showing up and stepping out. So start where you are.
I love that so much, Susan. Thank you for that. I'm sad that we are wrapping up our time
Me
together
too.
in this conversation, but I'd love to ask one last question, and that
Mhm.
is, what is the most important thing you would like our listeners to remember about the work that you're doing, Susan?
The most important thing is, regardless if it's your personal or professional brand, take a moment to develop that foundation, because at times of fear, at times of uncertainty, at times of imposter syndrome, you can always go back to that brand and purpose and remember, and that fuels me. Because
Yeah.
every day, actually, Lynn, I have some, I'm afraid
I
every
think
day.
any entrepreneur who tells you they're not every day,
Yes.
they're lying,
Thank you for
right?
saying that.
Yeah.
So every day I'm afraid, and then I go back and remind myself that I am living my purpose.
Yeah.
And again, start where I am and show up and step
Yeah.
out. And
I love
so
that.
that's, I think, the silver lining, other in addition to making good business sense for anybody, whether it's,
Yeah.
career search or business building, it is a way to infuse with courage and competence.
Absolutely. Susan, that's so good. And honestly, that sounds to me like the definition of true north. So it
Yeah.
all comes together.
Bravo to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Susan, I fully believe the world needs more people like you, more people advocating for women's health and leadership, more consultancies like True North. And I just thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule today.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate you and all that you do to build awareness for authentic stories.
The feeling is mutual,
That will
Susan.
change the world, right?
Yay!
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit kidglov.com at KIDGLOV.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.